Aloha, and welcome to another program in our series, A Better Day. Why do we say a better day? Well, our former governor, Governor Abercrombie, used to say a new day. Every time you wake up, you have a new day. We think you should have a better day, particularly in Hawaii. You know, people say you get the government that you deserve. Nobody deserves this government. We deserve a lot better, but you have to make it better. So that's what this program and what this series is all about. We try to have interesting topics and subjects and guests to try to give you a different point of view and an idea of where you can make a difference in your community, because you can. Well, here we are, December, the end of the year already. Was it fast enough for you? You know, they used to say when you got older, the days went faster, but I think that was something that somebody's messed with social media and the time continuum, because boy, every year seems to go a lot faster. And I know I'm not getting any older. Are you? Yeah, of course not. Anyway, here we are coming to the end of the year, which means several things. A lot of holiday, pricing and gifting and spending and worries and things like that. On the other hand, we get ready for the beginning of a new year where we're always optimistic. Well, we have a new governor now. It's going to be interesting to see how Governor Ige does. I wish him well. I think he's going to do well. It was interesting, too, because when he first got elected, people were saying, well, wherever will he get people to volunteer or to serve in the government? Well, there were more than 800 applications of people that wanted to serve with him, and he's got some very good people. And it's going to be interesting because a lot of those cabinet-level people that he appoints has to be confirmed by your state senate. So that will take place in the very near future as well. Well, look, when we get to the end of the year, particularly this year, and particularly in Hawaii, how do you assess what's going on? I'm not talking about what the economists say, what the media say, and certainly not what the politicians say. What do you say? Has this been a good year for you? You have a good trend? Are you able to take care of your family? Are you feeling good economically? Because remember, our former governor used to tell us all the time about how the economy had turned around and things had gotten better and we're on the right track and all that. And then I'd come into your homes once a month and say, it's not true. We've not turned the corner. Things are tough and they're getting worse. And we're going to have to really make some significant changes, which we have not made as yet. So how's it been for you? For most people in this community, and particularly the small business community, it's been really difficult. It's been a continuing struggle. And it doesn't have to be that way. We still have the resources, we've got the individuals, we've got the opportunities. But we have to take a different turn in terms of what we do. We are government-centric. Every time there's a problem, we look at government for our answer. We used to look to ourselves, to our families, to our associates, to small businesses. Now the first thing we say is we're entitled. We got our hands out, we go to government, we want a grant for this, we want money for that. And guess what? The money's not there, and it's going to be less and less. It's going to be a very difficult year, January 21st, when the next state legislature convenes. The main focus of attention will be the next 2-year operating budget. And by 2016, a lot of us have already said on record, including the former budget director, that the state of Hawaii will be cash broke. So a lot of things. Look, I don't want to ruin your holidays and all that, but wait a minute. Are you stupid? You know, the reason I ask is because last month we had a number of government officials that actually came out on the federal level talking about the American electorate, the American voter, the American taxpayer as being stupid. And that's why they in government had to lie to us to get certain programs passed, notably Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, but other programs as well. What does this say to you when your government officials don't tell you the truth? What it says to me is that you have to always, always, always be vigilant and keep those of us in public office, keep our feet to the fire. Ask questions. Get answers. Remember always, you're the masters and we're the servants. Anyway, look, I got a really special guest for you today. You've been reading and seeing with video clips problems involving law enforcement here in Hawaii, notably City and County of Honolulu, specifically the Honolulu Police Department, the prosecutor's office, problems with certain people or certain types of people getting hassled, and a genuine belief that there is less transparency and more chicanery going on with law enforcement than ever before. And it's really difficult when you have to undermine the very agencies that are there to protect you. Look, I'm a critic of government, you know that. But government's number one objective and number one responsibility is protection at the national level, at the state and local level as well. And so we've had some troubling incidents recently, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail today. And I've got a really good special guest today. He's Dr. Aaron Hunger, professor at Remington College in Honolulu, a former law enforcement official, and somebody who's taken this to heart. It's become his mission to make sure that we have law enforcement reform. So, Dr. Hunger, Aaron, welcome. Aloha.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, but let me set the record straight. I'm in the doctorate program, and maybe a year and a half from now, I'll be able to accept Dr. Hunger. But definitely teaching criminal justice and teaching political science at the University of Hawaii and Remington College, and am absolutely thrilled to be here and
Great.
talk about
Well,
this.
we've talked before, and I had the honor and privilege of addressing the commencement of Remington College a couple months ago. But I was interested in your passion, how you got involved in this. Why don't you give us a little bit of Aaron Hunger 101, if you're not a doctor yet, almost doctor.
Almost
How's
doctor.
That? And by the way, Aaron Hunger, you're not involved in the Hunger Games in any way,
No,
are you?
unfortunately,
You
I
don't
get
get any residuals.
I don't get any residuals
Okay.
from that. I'm right there with the
All right.
average.
Where did you
person.
come from, and how did you get involved in this?
So Sam, I came from Berkeley, which is a very sort of liberal idea and progressive
really?
thinking.
Oh, I had never heard that
progressive
before.
thinking area. In
Yeah.
fact, in terms of criminal justice,
Yeah.
it's where the first school of criminology was founded.
Oh, I did not know that.
Back in 1905, August Vollmer and UC Berkeley
Uh-huh.
really started with police reform. And the idea of reforming the profession of policing is nothing new. We've had the Knapp Commission, the Warren Commission,
Sure.
the all of these points in history where we've looked at the profession and how it was being carried out, the methodology, and really brought in new ideas and new thinking around how this profession was going to operate. And nationally, we're at that point again. We have Ferguson, Missouri. We have incidents in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Florida, and of course here in Honolulu. So this is not a local problem that's not being shared by a national audience. And because of that, I really think that the legislature and that the community is in a unique position here to make some incredible changes that put us in line with some of the best practices in law enforcement and other national models. And there are simple simple things that we can do within the legislature and in the community to make these problematic areas within the criminal justice system somewhat less frequent.
What's been your own personal experience in law enforcement? What did you do?
So my experience was when I grew up in a household with police officers. My grandfather was an Oakland policeman, and so that ideology was heavy in my house. And because of that, I had the mindset of a second-generation policeman. And so at 19, I finished college and said, look, this is nice, but not right now in my life, and really started to pursue a career in policing. First in the military on the federal level, and I was blessed to get into a great unit. I was transferred overseas to Germany. I worked undercover doing black market enforcement with U.S. Customs. I had great training. I was in the Berlin Brigade, which allowed me to see some of the biggest transitions in society when the Berlin Wall fell. I had a chance to go overseas and serve during wartime in the Persian Gulf, all doing the policing job. So I've seen policing from a lot of different aspects, federally to begin with, and then when I got out in '92, I went back to Florida and started a civilian career in policing, and that lasted until 2001, where I was working on a very big case in California, and I was injured on the job as a policeman. And so as I was retired and still worked and had an interest in policing, that went from actually doing the job to being an academic and sort of looking at the history and seeing how I could participate from there. And that's where my passion really came from in terms of participating in this subject.
What kind of problems are we talking about, both nationally and locally?
So right now, what I've observed, based upon what's transpired over the last year, is we're dealing with two different issues. One of them is clearly a training issue, where the ideology about what should be taught to police officers is really in question. We've had domestic violence issues, homeless issues, mental health issues, all where we haven't seen strong police training. But the training advisors within HPD, who set the idea for the entire state, because there is no state board right now to sort of review what the ideology is for training, has said that the focus would be on first shooter training, which is a necessary thing within a department. But if that's the primary focus, then that comes at the cost of other things that are really community centric. Things like being trained to work and to spot mental illness, to really be able to deal with that on a different level, to offer services to homeless, to know what services are there, to help the homeless instead of criminalizing them, to deal with domestic violence in a whole different aspect, to sort of see the victim's point of view and understand that you're the state. You're there representing the state. And so the idea that a victim needs to press charges is simply one that we don't train with anymore. This profession by the prosecutors and lawyers, that if there's no victim, there's no crime, is ancient criminal justice thinking. Modern thinking is now that police are representatives of the state, and the crime is committed against the people of the state.
But it seems like we're putting an awful lot of additional burden on anybody in law enforcement and expecting them to do the work of a doctor, of a sociologist, of an attorney, and everything else. Is that explained to recruits when they come in? Do they have an idea of what the scope of that training is going to be and responsibility?
Well, that's the responsibility of the department during their recruiting phase to make that understood. Whether that's being done right now, I guess I'll find out as they're coming to Remington College tomorrow to do recruiting. So we'll evaluate that. But it should be, because that's really the role of the police officer. He is the first representative of the state to go out and make contact with the public. And that person, it's really their discretion of how they're going to handle this interaction between communities and the state. They are really street bureaucrats, and their job is to go out and identify things like homeless people in need that need services and educate them on where they can go get them in this community. They are an information source. And if they're not being trained that this is their primary idea, that 90% of their calls are going to be calls for service and only 10% are really the crime fighting calls, then really we're not focusing on the right types of things to train. And that's what a state standards board does, is it takes these CALEA, the CALEA policies that oversee the police department, and they get reviewed every 3 years by CALEA, and really make those the focus every year and constantly as an oversight mechanism on the state level.
For our viewers that may not know, what is CALEA?
CALEA is an accrediting agency which in most states, it's either the police officers are licensed or somehow they're certified to operate as a police officer within the state. And this is not anything new. We license estheticians, massage therapists, security guards in the state.
Sure.
But for some reason we don't certify or license the people that carry the guns and can arrest us.
Has that been a union issue?
Well, the union has definitely chimed in on this issue,
In
and
opposition?
in opposition, and said that internal mechanisms would be sufficient to handle this. But 49 other states have sort of considered this, and if not being the lone handout, we're set to be the lone holdout that does not have a state mechanism that oversees an idea of what the training should include. And this is a great mechanism to include voices that aren't there, like your indigenous population, what it is to be Ohana, how to make aloha. And this is really where you can shape and mold the state idea of including aloha in law enforcement through the correction system, through the police department, through the prosecutor's office. But if there's no state mechanism, then the new people coming in really can't be held to those standards. So having that mechanism created is something that the legislature can work on in the next session by introducing a bill that was actually introduced last year and then never made its way forward through the legislature.
Did it ever get a hearing?
From what I understand, no. What happened to Bill 2937 is it was read in the General Senate and then it was referred to its committee. Most bills start with the open session. Then depending on what the bill is, it goes to that specific committee to have those experts review what the bill is and whether it's appropriate. When it went to the committee, for some reason it was never read, although it was authored by the chair of the committee, so it was a strongly authored bill. Whatever the reason is, there's an opportunity now with January to reintroduce that bill and to have it move forward. And you and I have talked about this before.
Right.
This bill, it's confusing to the public to understand why a bill that has both Republican and Democratic support, it has a Democratic author, and it has
Well, it's not a partisan issue, right?
This is a bipartisan
safety
supported
issue.
issue. Right.
Community
And
issue.
to have the bill not read then becomes confusing when you have bipartisan support.
Yeah.
It really seems as if though there are agents or there are actors at work that are obstructing real types of reform within the state at the state level. Because not only do we have state mechanism problems with oversight and with the idea of progressing training and reforming training, but there's also the local mechanisms that are not working either.
All right, you said that there were two major problems. One is the mechanism and all that. What's the other problem?
Well, one of them is the state agency that really certifies or licenses that's non-existent in the state right now. The seconds are the commissions that are assigned to each department, which build a community sense of oversight, an external mechanism that the community can participate in, and usually where most community people are channeled for their problems. If they have problems with the department, they're sent to the commission. This is now being done in Albuquerque, it's being done in Los Angeles, it's being done in Chicago, and now in Ferguson, Missouri, where the most attention is being paid to educating people about the criminal justice system. So having these commissions empowered to be the mechanism to review the officers that won't be trained but have already gotten the jobs and are already in there and that may have been problematic or may have community problems, that's the agency that's really created to give citizens a connection into the department. Then of course the department has its own internal mechanisms, which it's supposed to take those CALEA rules, which we talked about, set the policy standards and enforce those. So you have multiple levels of oversight for the police nationally. Now here, again, because of legislation and because of some union actors, a lot of those mechanisms have either been repositioned or never created, which has left all of the oversight to the police department itself. And because of legislation created there, a lot of the findings of those cases are never disclosed to the public.
And that's when we get into the issue of lack of transparency and other problems.
That's
That's how we had during the past legislative session the issue of whether or not police officers could engage in sexual intercourse when trying to arrest prostitutes. And people were amazed because the community did not have the knowledge, and the police department was not forthcoming in terms of providing that information, and initially, in fact, opposed legislation to change that. So, you know, and let's keep this in perspective. When we're talking about these problems and everything else, I think by all accounts and all measures, we have a very good police department.
Absolutely.
We have dedicated men and women.
Absolutely.
And I think we have people in the community, people that serve on the police commission and elsewhere, that want to do these things, but because they're not being done, and because, boy, there were a lot of, I guess, public relations gaffes in the last couple of months involving the HPD, the Honolulu Police Department, various sectors of the state legislature. I think we're going to see more of a willingness to make these changes in 2015. Let's hope so.
Well, I think what we're seeing now is not unique to Hawaii. What we're really seeing is a national waking up that we understand that people just have not been educated about our criminal justice system. Although they live within these laws every day, they know very little about the workings or the goings on, or really what their rights are within this process. And so that has left this big space for people to sort of tell people, well, this is your rights. And because they're not educated, they don't get a book when they're born. These are the laws of Hawaii, or a
It's
test.
like what I always say about elections and about political parties. If you don't define yourself, then you're going to allow other people to do it, and they may not be too accurate.
Correct. And so what we've had here is a small group of people that have been disseminating information, and that information hasn't always been accurate. For example, some of the actors have said, well, we don't know that a state board or that community participation within the review process is anything that should be handled by non-professionals. Quite the contrary, the national trend is to include community voices in these, not to go the opposite direction. So it's almost seen as obstructionist policy to try to prevent these types of commissions from being formulated or these types of boards from being enacted.
From another point of view, though, and from one who has served in the legislature, all the time we're creating boards, commissions, blue ribbon panels, task forces, working groups, and all that. Can we overdo it? Can we overstudy any of these things, thus diminishing the responsibilities and the effectiveness of, say, the police department or law enforcement?
Absolutely. Too much is as bad as too little. And so what needs to be looked at is a clear policy going forward, which is why I know for a fact that the bill that was introduced last year was co-authored by one of the leading criminologists when it comes to creating oversight mechanisms. They definitely helped create the prospectus bill from last year, and as I understand, will be reintroduced this year again bipartisanly. And so it doesn't seem as if though the community or the legislation or even the experts are opposed to this. Or even the police chief. He's come out a number of times saying, as an academic, and let's remind the community, the police chief was hired, one of the reasons why was he holds PhDs. He understands these higher theoretical concepts when it comes to ideas like community policing or switching the power dynamic within the department to better empower the community. This chief gets it. He's been trained there, and he's expressed a willingness over and over to work with the legislator, to work with some of the domestic violence actors or the female caucus or mental health issues. So he's not really the person saying, wait, let's not do this. And that's what a good police chief should. They should say, look, we're here to serve the public. You guys are making sort of the rules. We're here enforcing the laws that you set. So if you change the law to decriminalize A, B, or C, it's not our job as the police to say that's not a good law and we're not going to stand behind it. The job of the police is to say, well, if the community has agreed that that's the law, then we have to go out and basically enforce those laws that the community has agreed upon. That's the position of police departments nationally. And that's what a lot of police departments, especially in Colorado, Seattle, Washington, D.C., are starting to see now, that training is crucial as we start as a society to make big decisions about how we're going to change how we live in the future. And if we expect the police to keep up with society, we can't have police that are ethnocentric or dug in on some position where the community has moved on and the police disagree with the community's action. It's a dynamic that sets up a more frictious.
Okay, so somebody that's been watching this program, been listening to you and all that, other than if they just have a beef with the police, what can a citizen do, what should a citizen do to effectuate this change?
Well, the change now starts with the legislature. Really, the community needs to continue to pay attention. This is where a lot of reform falls through the gap, is just the time that goes from a reading of a bill to an enacting of a bill. And there's a lot of things that happen between point A and point B. And if the community doesn't maintain itself to say, no, we already established that there was a problem. We're not going to go back and dispute that there's a problem anymore. We're beyond that. We're at the point of reforming and fixing the problem now. Now we want real answers, and the answers are here. The legislation has them. The bill has been written. So community people need, the community needs to go around and really rally around your senators, rally around your representatives, and impress upon them the point that this is important, that we're sort of not on the national trend, that we're sort of going in the opposite direction, and
We usually go in our own direction.
but in this case, it's
Yeah.
it's a direction where we lose as the community, and so we really want to change
Professor
this.
Aaron Hunger, Remington College. If somebody wants to get in touch with you or wants to talk to you more or additionally about this, how's the best way to contact you?
I'm in the book at the University of Hawaii. You're welcome to come see me there, or at Remington College. Please come down. I know they'd love to see you there. Or you can email me at hunger@hawaii.edu, and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Great.
We're here to find solutions as a community, and I'm part of this, and I'm
Terrific.
happy to be here with you.
Thank you. Professor Aaron Hunger of Remington College. And I pledge that we will continue to provide you with up-to-date information and status. And of course, you can always call my office. We'll be very happy to help you. In the meantime, we wish you the happiest of holidays, the merriest of Christmas. Thank you so much for joining us this past year. And we look forward to a new year coming up, 2015. And remember, let's work towards a better day. Aloha.